Ignition.
We could talk about baseball drills, but then you run out of material.
Yeah.
And like,
well, and you're probably going to run out of your audience too. Unless it's unless it's, when I see a Facebook post of someone putting like, hey, how's my kid swing? And then one person puts another thing, and then you see all these negative comments. You got to love those things, right? So it's like you're going to post a drill out there, and then someone's going to be like, that's the worst drill in the entire world.
well, and and it's the same comment over and over again when you go through those posts. It's like, oh, his front foot's messed up, his back leg's jacked up. Like, what the hell is this coach teaching?
He's dropping his shoulder. Watch this Albert Pujols swing. Yeah, I'll replicate that.
Every coach sucks on the internet.
Right. Well, like I saw some guy was he was, he put on Facebook, he's promoting this new product. And I looked into it because I love technology and, in our sports world. And it was some pitching ball. I don't even know what it did. Right. And the guy even said, like, it was like the cheapest intro video of a product in the world. Like, he's just starting. Right. And he posted it on Facebook. And you know what? It caught my attention. I opened it up. And the guy even said, hey, this kid's never pitched before. So, like, the comments were all about this kid's pitching mechanics and then saying like this product must be garbage. Poor guy. It's like he's doing this awesome thing, It's like Wall Street Bets. When you get everyone in together to create this massive shark, you cannot survive. Oh, that's hilarious. So my wife was just asking me all the time, like, what's going on with GameStop? Is that a good thing? I'm like, GameStop is like Blockbuster, if you remember what that is. So I don't even know how it's happening. And then I read the news and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So
there it is. All right, you ready to do a formal introduction here?
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
All right.
Let's finish it.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of The Closing Pitch. My name is Spiker Helms, and this is a show about people, culture, and how to create a winning lifestyle. Today, as we bring in a new episode, we have one of my friends that I've met at the ABCA, and this goes back to my tournament guy days and really going into startup culture. And I'm really excited to have him on because startup culture and baseball players, I feel like there's a lot of correlation there in a lot of cases. He's also a baseball guy. He is one of the founders of Tourney Machine. His name is Todd Lawler. Todd, what's up?
Hey, how you guys doing? Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I mean, I tell you, I found out you guys were doing this through Brandon Magarowski, and I was a little jealous that I wasn't asked first. So
I knew I was going to get that call right when Brandon said, "Yeah, I'm going to talk to Todd." I'm like, "Oh crap." Todd's going to call me, and I should have called him first. But it's all good. I actually think it'd be dynamic to have you and Brandon on the show. Just knowing our conversations, I could totally see it going in totally different directions.
Minimum 3 hours.
Yeah, minimum 3 hours. It's probably a Joe Rogan.
Maybe a minimum of 3 hours. So I love Brandon. He's a great guy. He's one of the guys I've stayed connected with after Tourney Machine, and we bounce a lot of great ideas and business ideas with each other. And, that's the one thing that we try to strive at Tourney Machine is that they weren't just customers of ours. They were part of our family, and Brandon really was one of those guys. And, I still keep in touch with him. He's a great dude. He's doing some great things in this world. He's one of the good guys, and not only him, his organization is really good. And he does it for the right reasons, and that's why I like him a lot. So,
what I think is crazy was our conversation last week, and you shared the story of you helping him out with tournaments, and you actually driving down. And I remember at the ABCA you were talking about different, like you doing that in the beginning of Tourney Machine. Did you do that often? Like just literally like, oh, I'll help you with it. If you just use our product, I'll help you.
Yeah, no, that's so you got to remember when we launched Tourney Machine, it was brand spanking new. Like it was PDFs. If any technology was introduced in the tournament world, it was an Excel sheet, right? And to change people's minds on something is really tough. It's you think it's obvious and they should do it, but it's really, really tough to break someone's habits and change, right? So, and I knew it was good, like as a consumer standpoint, it's because that's why we got, that's why we created it. But it's tough to, when someone's doing something one way and it's still working for them and just say, no, we're going to make it better for you. They look at you like, yeah, right. And so no, I still remember one of our very first clients was Pastime Tournaments, Tom Davidson, and I wanted to get that big one, right? I wanted to get that big one, and Tom was probably the biggest independent tournament director out there, and I was working with actually Blake Hibbler at first, and I don't know if you know Blake.
Yeah, I know Blake.
Oh yeah,
yep.
Oh yeah.
So Blake was awesome, and like Blake was working for Tom at the time, and I got the deal done. I remember going out to, I was, I had my own team, so I was in tournaments all the time. And I remember it was like a 99-degree day and seeing Blake Hibbler up we're at Valpo in Indiana. And he was like, I think he was in misery. He was just kind of sitting there like this, porched up. And I remember like in between games, I walked up to him. I said, hey, you running this tournament? He goes, yeah. And I'm like, hey, can I show you something? And it was literally like, we didn't really have anything. I just showed him like how to enter a score in our system. And it's like he was in this slouch position and then all of a sudden he perked up and was like, wait, what is that? I go, yeah. I go, you just do this and it's going to automatically update the standings and do everything. He was like, that's awesome. And Blake was one of the good people who got it, right? And so I worked with Blake for like 30 days on how we building this better and doing different things. And it was awesome. But we were ready to go with Pastime, right? Ready to go because Blake was my guy. Yeah. Then Blake left. He left. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I call up Tom Davidson and I said, Tom, hey, how you doing? And I didn't know Tom. I don't know if you guys know Tom. And Tom's a good guy if you know him.
Yep.
But if you don't know him, you don't know him and you might think different, right? But he's a great dude. And I go to Tom. I said, "Hey, Tom, I've been working with Blake. We've been really having some good progress on this tournament stuff." And he goes, "I'm not going to do it this year, Todd. I can't risk it. Whatever." I said, "Let me drive down and meet you, and I'll talk to you, and we're going to do this." He goes, "Fine." So I drive down to Tom, and he gave me the reasons why he didn't want to do it. And I said, "What's your biggest struggle?" He goes, "Scheduling, Todd." I go, "I can't schedule in your system and schedule in mine. I have a unique way of doing it. And it's going to take too much time." And I'm like, instead of walking out, and saying, I give up, I turned around and said, "I will do your schedules for you." And he's like, "What?" I go, "Yes, I will do your schedules for you." I go, "I just need you to use this thing." And he's like, "Deal." And now I didn't know why he said deal until after the fact.
It's like a no-brainer.
If you talk to him today, he'll laugh at your face like Todd's the biggest sucker in the world, which I was. But I was literally in this whole new platform. I was his tournament director for all of his tournament directors because they didn't know what they were doing because it was new to them. So I literally scheduled every single Pastime tournament in like 2014. I remember legitimately like one day he gave me the wrong information. I was ready to drive down and punch him in the face. Tom made it like a puzzle. I've done this before with people and like to help them out, and they just give me basically an open canvas where I could schedule, and I could schedule fast, right? Now Tom wanted to make it his most like the toughest situation for me to give up. Like he was like 5 game slots here, 1 game slot here, but this team can't do this, team can't. So he gave me the wrong information on game slots, and I never really wanted to question him because it was still new. I was one day doing a schedule. It was for his big University of Louisville tournament. And it was, I started like at 5 p.m., kind of got the kids' family down and ready to go. And I literally, like, I kissed my wife goodnight. She went to bed. And the next morning, I was still in the same position, like at 5:30 in the morning, that I was at 5 p.m. at night, because I was like banging my head. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And I finally like got the courage to talk to Tom and say, Tom, like, it's impossible. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, man. And then he looks at it and goes, oh man, oh, you actually have that. And I was like, oh my gosh, Tom, I'm gonna kill you.
So you were basically you were working for free as an employee for Tom, hoping that.
Yes,
I love it.
I was.
I absolutely love it.
Oh no, but you know what though? I will tell you, it made me learn that part of the industry like better than ever. And it literally launched our product because I could schedule better than anyone. And I will say that to anyone's face. Like, I'm a better scheduler than you, just because I had to be. And I started doing it for other events and, companies. And, but like it literally made me learn the product, not just as a business standpoint, but as a consumer standpoint, and what makes it important. And it literally, we had a big powwow of what we needed to do next as a company, and it launched us. So that was great as a product side, but even as a brand awareness, Tom was doing like 2,000 to 3,000 teams, and people saw that, and other tournament companies saw that. So that took us to another level, even to the point. It was my first meeting with Perfect Game, and Taylor McAuliffe. I don't know if you guys know Taylor or not. He's kind of runs of the tournament operations. I don't know his head title, but I remember meeting with him. At first, it was hilarious because he thought we were just going to do a phone call, and I actually drove out to Cedar Rapids because that's where they were located at the time, and he was like on the phone waiting for me, and I was like literally peeking over his cubicle at the time and said, "Hey, you ready to do this meeting? You're here?" I'm like, "Yeah." So we actually did that, and they got inundated by a lot of people like us saying like, "Oh, I've seen it all. You can't do it, Lawler. You can't do it." And then I looked at Taylor. Taylor thought he was a big deal, which he was. They did that big, wood bat tournament where there had 200 teams, and he, scheduling it. He was like, "No one can match this." And I looked at Taylor and I said, "Taylor, I could do that schedule." And I go, "I did all of Tom Davidson's schedules, and like every weekend, every time." He looked at me like, "You did every schedule?" He goes, "How much did he pay you?" I'm like, "Let's not talk about that."
The fact is that I did it.
But it gained credibility, and which was great for us, because literally he knew that, if we did all of those, we could handle his. And, we started a relationship with Perfect Game at that time, and that launched us too, because the one thing that, even though Perfect Game, and I think you all know this about Perfect Game, they want it to be Perfect Game. We did get our label on there, and a lot of other tournament companies saw that, and that launched us into baseball. So that hard work, free work, really paid off. So which was great. So,
and you guys, this was 2000. You guys started in 2011, right? That was the first initial idea. Was 2011?
Actually, it was 2000. The idea came in like 2009, and then we had like a beta version in 2010. And our first customer actually was a baseball, like one event operator in Maryland. It was actually a fundraising opportunity for a kid who was ill, and that was our first customer. And then got word of it because we did a good job, and then it kind of just kept on growing and growing. And obviously, doing what I did with Tom Davidson took it to a different level. But it really started out because I was running my own team, Spiker. I think I told you that, right? I had my own baseball organization, not as big as the Tigers, but it was pretty decent here in Chicago. And I hated going to tournaments. Like, it literally was a nightmare for me, right? I didn't really go to that many tournaments as a kid because I was at that level of still like little league, and travel sports wasn't massive yet, and even with the 29ers, when I first started it, there wasn't what we have today, right? There was only a few travel, when I say travel teams, real travel teams there. There was in the Chicagoland area, it was really the teams that are kind of the top teams. It was like the Long Shots. It was the Sparks program. And I kind of was this new kid on the block. But like, I used to travel these tournaments, and like pulling my hair out of trying to get information. Like literally, it was the worst thing in the world. And I'm not trying to mock on Tom here, but it was one of his tournaments that it just drove me absolutely nuts. I'm driving from Chicago, going to a tournament in Indianapolis, and I could see rain on its way. And a team from Michigan and a team from Illinois drove to meet at a game that never was played because the fields were underwater. And we called the hotline. We called, we looked at the website. No one knew. And I was just like, there's got to be a better way. And then, and it was, that's just not, there was more than just that one incident. It would happen like every weekend where the worst was, you got into bracket play, on a Saturday night and you didn't know you were playing the next morning until the next morning. Right. And I'd get that phone call like, hey, your team's supposed to be here. Like, what? Like,
do you remember the whole call tree, where you would actually call somebody and then you would get the message? It was like a list of, did you know that?
I never heard that.
No. So like you have a list of people on a list and like
did you have to call the next person?
Yeah. And you have to call the next person.
Oh, good God.
And if you end up having, like, obviously you put the most reliable people at the top and the most unreliable. So it's an easy way of like knowing like, yeah, I probably shouldn't trust that guy.
Yeah, no, and then, you find out who really messed up on that. So, but that's how it was. I mean, it literally was a hotline and, that hotline was always busy and the tournament director was trying to field calls. So it was like, we need to find a better way. I mean, literally we need to find a better way. So I was very fortunate. I'm not that smart, but I got really smart people in my family. So I remember going to my two cousins who I knew that were in like program development, and they were working for Best Buy and Sprint and building scheduling software. So I call up my cousin Rob, who I had a really great relationship with, because I was playing baseball in Iowa for some teams, and I lived with him for a while. And I just called him up one day and just said, "Hey, I have an idea." And he's like, "What?" Because he gets that, programmers get that like question all
the time.
Yeah. Can we do this?
You get like the visionaries always go to the software engineers, and the software, they're like, oh crap, another visionary.
Great. No, I get policed. I get still policed in my own company where like I can't. There's like a group of software developers I cannot talk. So because I will
they get stressed out. They get completely stressed out.
Yeah, I do. I get shut out because I'm the one who's trying to do crazy things. So, but luckily I came up with the idea of, I talked to him and said, hey, what if we created something, for tournaments to communicate better with their fans and make their processes easier? And it was funny because they were in a similar situation as parents, and their kids were huge into soccer, and they were traveling all over the soccer tournaments, because soccer tournaments have been going on for a while, and they were facing the same challenges as parents. And the conversation just kept on snowballing. And I mean, literally, we actually had a meeting where it was like, are we going to do this? And then we found out there was kind of some software companies doing this in soccer. And we're kind of like, oh, maybe we shouldn't. There's people already in the market. And then my cousin Tom is a genius. I mean, he's one of the smartest guys you can bring in a room. He's awesome. He just, he said, he goes, hey, it's okay if second to market, we might do it better than them. He goes, there's obviously a problem, so that's why they're there. Let's just do it better. And then we decided to do it. And it was kind of a hobby. I mean, I had another job I was working on. Rob is the one who really did a good job of making sure things happen because he saw it as an issue. And slowly started introducing it. And then I decided to go full time with it. And then it kind of exploded because we actually developed a team around the product. And it exploded more than whatever we thought it was going to be, which was awesome.
Now you're not on Tourney machine anymore.
No, I'm not. And it was a fun ride.
Can you explain like what happened and like where that product is right now?
Yeah.
Or can you not talk about that?
No, honestly, it's still an incredible product. I love it because it gains credibility when I talk to someone. We're working in the high school industry right now, but if we go into somewhere and say, hey, yeah, we started this company, Tourney Machine, I mean, it's still the number one tournament product out there. So it makes me look good. So, I think, I think it's in, good hands. I know they're developing some things with it. So, I mean, Sports Engine, I think, owns it right now. We got bought out by Sports Illustrated. It was unfortunate for Sports Illustrated because Time Inc. was going through some troubles, and they actually sold as a company. And unfortunately, we couldn't do things that we really wanted to do, and it wasn't anyone's fault. It's just money ran out in direction of the overall parent. Yeah, it was the parent company that couldn't do it. So there were some great people involved with that, and unfortunately, it didn't happen. Then Sports Engine kind of stepped in and took it over. And they're doing a lot of great things in youth sports. I don't know. Justin Koffenberg was he kind of was like us. That's why I enjoyed it. My times talking with Justin. I mean, because he started kind of with an idea too and built it up, and where he actually sold to NBC. And they got a lot of great people out there and great things going on. So now I do know this is that with Tourney Machine, and this is a good thing, is that more people are coming to the market, so there's going to be options for people, which competition's always good. It's what drives you, right? I mean, if we didn't have our competition, which we did, we had a guy called Exposure Tournaments, we would have not developed anymore. And so the fact that other people are coming into this space, I think, is always going to be a great thing for the consumers, because it's going to drive technology, because Tourney Machine is, I think it's over 10 years old, right? A lot of these products are getting older. So it's going to drive them to build new things, which is always going to be a win for the directors who are running events, and it's going to be a win for the people involved with the events. So
is it crazy to think that, did you realize that this product would have been that influential, where you end up going up to somebody and be like, yeah, I created Tourney Machine? I feel like in youth sports, that'd be like someone going up and saying, I created Twitter. That's how I feel it, because I know that's kind of a way out there, and you're like, no, it's not like Twitter. But from a youth sports standpoint, from a tournament director, and parents have seen that product constantly, is that crazy to think about?
We never thought it would be that successful. I mean, it was supposed to be really a hobby. Honestly, it was one of those things that we just didn't know it was going to be that big. I mean, kind of the whole, and I'll backtrack a little bit here about kind of how it really, really started. I mean, and how we got fortunate. I mean, I kind of gave you a little bit about it, but I hated my job originally that I had. I was a pharmaceutical rep. And before that, I did love my job. I was in the fitness industry, actually selling heart rate monitors. I was working with my dad. I was traveling all over the world. I mean, not world, take that back, the country. But selling an awesome product and really helping people out. And all of a sudden, my dad got sick. Unfortunately, he had colon cancer, and I had basically stopped what I was doing to go kind of be at home. So I got a job in the pharmaceutical industry, which is really a great job. But I literally woke up every day, Spike, just saying, I hate my job. Like, I hated myself. Like, it literally wasn't me. I was a sports guy. I was a fitness guy. I wanted to be active. I wanted to get out there. And it just drove me nuts every day. And I still remember, I got a funny story to go along with this, is that, they used to always talk about running your own business. Like, you got to run it like your own business, which is great. I mean, that's, I get it. It's awesome.
All in.
But I'd always say, you're running your business into the ground, man. So, but anyways, when I was doing the pharmaceutical industry, I got asked to coach a baseball team, and it was with the White Sox organization, and it was a youth team, and I loved it. I literally was like, oh my gosh, I'm back into it, right? And that's where that's how this all started, because I saw the problem, right? And then time went on, and then I still was doing this job. I was still doing this job, and I hated it. And my dad unfortunately passed away. Now that job was a great job because it served my time, because I got to stay home and take care of my family. So I was very, that's a great thing about that job. I was able to take care of my father during some of the worst moments and help out my mom. And actually, it was a great time spending a lot of quality time with my father. But that's where I kind of said, like, man, I need to change. Like when he passed away, I actually started the 29ers. That was actually honor of my dad. So my dad's number was 29. People always, every time tournament,
Oh, I didn't know
Oh,
that.
cool.
why are you the 29ers? So my dad his number was 29. And my dad was a legendary coach in Illinois. He actually started the summer state tournament when travel sports wasn't around. So he wanted more kids to have a better experience playing more baseball. He actually was a physical education teacher where it wasn't just like rolling all out. He literally incorporated fitness where there was books wrote about him. Like literally there's a guy named John Rady who's an ADHD specialist. He wrote the book called Spark, and he actually did it because of my father, because it was like a revolutionary change of how exercise affects the brain. And so my dad was not only this incredible person in the kind of fitness world, but he also was an incredible person in the baseball world. And literally, he actually started something called the prospect list, which basically every summer he used to call every scout out there, every college coach, and say, "Hey, give me your top 4 players," and then they would grade them. And he would have his own algorithm where he would call it the cream of the crop, where he would actually list the top like 10 players who were like pro prospects, and then everywhere else. And then obviously when his health deteriorated, it kind of went downhill. And he actually kind of, I mean, honestly, I know Sean Duncan probably doesn't want to hear this, but I think Sean took it over. Like Sean Duncan of PBR
Wow.
saw this, and my dad loved Sean Duncan, and because Sean used to be a reporter, and my dad loved Sean because he would report on his high school baseball. Like it was awesome. And so when my dad's health deteriorated, it was other guys were trying to step in to do what he did, but no one knew how to work how hard my dad worked. Like no one knew how hard my dad worked, and it was failing. And then Sean really kind of resurrected it. And then I think Baseball Report got born. So I will take credit for that. In that sense. So
You get royalties on that, right?
But honestly, and I actually love. I actually love what those guys are doing because I'm big into high school sports. I think you know that, Spike. And our software that we're doing now is in high school sports, and they promote. They actually, I think they've saved high school baseball in some ways, especially in my state, because they promote it. Media is dying in high school athletics, and they're actually promoting it, and it's fun for that. So I tip my cap to those guys and what they're doing. So, but to kind of answer your question, but Tourney Machine I was blessed to do it because we had a driving passion for it. So, when the 29ers happened, my dad's legacy, I wanted to do something new. So I got out of the industry. I remember calling my cousin Rob and saying, "I'm ready to go. Let's go. Let's go at full bore." Because I'm a big entrepreneur guy. I'm like, I think you guys can know this. I like hearing, seeing new things. And I was working for other people, Spike, and like helping them out with projects. I was working on some like blue light technology, which has been really good right now because it kills germs.
Yeah.
I was working with a guy on that, which would probably be a billionaire by now, but it didn't really work out. I was working with another guy called Connected Patients, which was a medical sales equipment company. And I just sat there one day and said, gosh, I'm doing a lot of work for someone. And I got this thing right here, which is awesome, called Tourney Machine, which no one knows about. I go, if I put my effort into that with my cousins like doing this already, I go, we can make this thing big. And that's kind of where it started, and that's kind of what drove me to do it, in that sense. And
Did that scare you of like no parachute? Because you know how like they say in startup.
Did it scare me? It didn't scare me as much, but I still remember I still remember my wife's look when I looked up to her and said, "I'm quitting my job," and we just had our our second child. Like literally, we were just getting done with our baby pictures. Like, and I looked up her at the railing and said, "I'm not doing it anymore." I go, "I'm going full in on Tourney Machine." She's like, she gave me the face. I go, "You have to trust me. we're gonna be successful. Because we started seeing a little momentum, and I'll tell you, my wife is the best person in the entire world because she did have faith in me and in our family. But yes, to answer your question, it was that fear of that situation is what really drove me every day to be successful, though. Like, it's like, if I fail, it's not just me, it's my family, and it motivates you. It really, really motivates you. So
My favorite quote of startup culture is the Netflix founder said, it's like jumping off of a cliff and trying to build an airplane before you crash.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a great analogy right there. It is a great analogy. I mean, because it's true. Because you don't know. You really don't know. I mean, even with the second go around, you don't know. I mean, we're still taking risk, of what we're doing. Now, the only thing that's better is that we've done it before, so we're a lot more educated on what we're doing, and so which is great. But it was a wild ride. I mean, some people look at you and be like, "Oh, it's easy," "Oh, you did cake stuff." And the grind that we put in every day, from our developers to our sales, the sales guys, which really salespeople was us. I mean, it was 18 to 20-hour days. I'm like, I kid you not, because we're hitting West Coast to East Coast. Like, East Coast guys would call me at 7 a.m. West Coast guys would call me at 11 o'clock at night. And it was, I mean, I had a lot of sleepless nights, man. A lot of sleepless nights, but obviously it was well worth it in the end. And, one of my favorite stories of all time was I was at my sister's 40th birthday party. And she invited, so I worked with my sister at the pharmaceutical company. So we had some peers in there. And I was at my sister's 40th birthday party. And, I'm just sitting there having a good time, talking, at a little bar stool. And one of my old bosses, who was running the regional director of our company, came up to me and was like, "Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?" I'm like, "I'm doing good." And he's like, "What are you up to?" I'm like, and we just sold Tourney Machine, right? We just sold it. And I don't think this guy really respected me. I don't know why, but I just was, he was just asking questions, and he was like, "So what are you up to?" I'm like, "Well, I got into software." And he's like, "Oh, great." He goes, how's that going?" I go, "Well, I started my own business." And he's like, "Oh, you did?" I'm like, "Yeah, you kind of inspired me when you always said, like, run this like your own business, right?" And he laughed, and he's like, "Well, how's that going?" Well, I go, "I just sold it to Sports Illustrated."
Boom. Drop the hammer. Drop the hammer.
My wife loved it because she knew my misery every day for work, like how I felt. And just to see his face go, like, his jaw just was like, "Wait, what?" And then the conversation just turned. Like, he looked at me as like an expert and everything else, which I'm not, but like, yeah, I guess I've been through it. But it was one of those moments I was like, yeah, I did it. Like, it was cool for me to do that. But it's funny, you ask about, like, Tourney Machine. Yeah, a lot of people know about it, which is great. But we really got the celebrity status, if you want to say that. And I never got this because I never got to go, with Sam Schill. I think you've met Spike.
Yeah,
He was one of our other guys.
Good
dude.
He went to the lacrosse. Like, lacrosse, man, is a wild sport, man. It's awesome. Like, I love lacrosse. I actually have never seen it before, but I've never played it. But the people there had a culture, which was amazing. But like, Sam went to the lacrosse show, which is like the ABCA, but like 30 times bigger, because they invite like players and teams. Like, just imagine bringing all your parents from the Rawlings Tigers to the ABCA. Like, that's how it is. It's like, they call it like Laxicon or something like crazy. And but like, Sam would go into, like, I think he went into an elevator one time, and he had his Tourney Machine shirt on, and a lady was asking him, like, "Hey, are you with Tourney Machine?" And Sam's like, "Oh, yeah, yeah." And she's like, "I love you." And Sam was like, "Oh my God." he's like, "I didn't know what to do." He's like, "I was flashing my ring." So, but no, but that was a cool accomplishment, because we were literally, our intentions was really to help out the public, because we were doing that. And again, even too, going into meetings right now and saying that we started that, and usually, like, I have not been to a meeting yet where someone doesn't have the app on their phone. And usually I'm talking to sports people. I'm like, oh, wait, you did this? So like, yeah, we started it. So, which was fun.
My question is, why hasn't like everything started consolidating into one app? Because you see that with Facebook, you see that with the social media space, and I know we're talking futuristic here. I'd love your opinion on this. Why have we not gotten to the point where we have everything into one app?
Well, we should. And really, we should for the public. I mean, honestly, the consumer base. I mean, I don't know why. I really don't know why. And it's funny. I had a.
Do you think it's because of all of the buying? Like the big companies started buying up the sports companies?
That did not. I think they were trying to do that, and then all of a sudden it went Sports Illustrated, or whatever. Jerry Jones to Dick's, right?
Yep. So it went. I remember like it was yesterday. You guys got bought. Then Blue Star started buying up these multiple companies.
Yeah.
I don't even know where Blue Star is right now. Dick's Sporting Goods bought Blue Sombrero, and then Game Changer, correct? Do they have Game Changer?
I believe so.
So those were the big three. And then NBC bought Sports Engine.
Yep. Oh, and I think, it's a good story I had was with Ted, who actually owned Game Changer. He was a great dude. And I actually talked to him after the fact when he was gone and I was gone. And we were talking, and Game Changer built this team messaging, right? And he was all jacked up about it. It was like the last project he did, and he was pretty pumped about it. And I just said, like, oh, that's cute. And he like looked at me like I offended him. And I'm like, he's like, I said, Ted, it's great that you have that. I go, it's going to be used. Like, you should be proud of that. I go, but you don't understand the issues that are at hand right now with the consumer. I go, they are going into 5 different platforms. And I go, like, their schedules on here, their tournaments are here, your game communications here, and then they have you. I go, it's not going to sync with anything. It's not like, yeah, you might have their regular season schedule, but you don't know the tournament schedules because you don't know those until like the day, like maybe 24 hours before. So I said, it's a good app. I'm not saying anything bad, but not having it all in one spot for everything, it's a shame. It's a shame for the public, and it's a shame for the consumer, right? So, and we're dealing this with actually in Spike, we're dealing with this in high schools right now. So like I've looked at the high school realm, and it's even, I think, more segmented than the amateur sports world, right? So like they use 15 different products to get like a lot of things done. And that's one of our goals, is to consolidate everything to make it easier, not only for the actual coaches, the athletic directors or state associations, but really for the fans. Because if it's one spot, it's going to be easier for people to communicate, to engage. And it's interesting that it hasn't happened yet. Now, if I was a betting man, and say it's, could that happen in the future? I could bet on the people that would probably do it. So I'll stop there on that one. So.
Talk about your new project that you're working on right now with the guys.
It's a passion project for me because I love high school sports. Like I think I said, my dad was a 35-year veteran coach. I actually coached high school baseball for 10 years. My brother's a high school baseball coach right now. And we kind of looked at the space. If you really look at the industry in a whole, the amateur sports industry, and I'm going to include college sports into that. In the early 90s, it was never really taken seriously. Like no one owned their brand, and no one, really looked at it as a business. And not saying that's always good, but it is good in some ways. So like colleges started doing it, and I did some research on this. Like Bobby Bowden, the Florida State football coach, like in the 80s was only making like $60,000. Like literally his salary from Florida State was like $60,000 to $80,000. And then in 93 it jumped up to like 1.2 million, right? So and it was and then the SEC started doing like the championship game, getting their own TV network, and it ended up being like it's $1 billion industry, right? And so you look at what they did, which was amazing. And then like high schools just didn't get into it yet, right? And they haven't yet, which is, there's a lot of, I'm not blaming anyone on that. There's just, it's so hard for them to do it. But then you have this, what happened was like you got, these other companies happening. Like, in our world with baseball, USSSA started popping up. In the 90s, they had to focus on youth sports instead of softball. Perfect games started coming. Like these operators started coming. Like organizations like yourself started popping up where it was kind of a business, right? And you guys own your brand, you own your marketing. You're thinking about how making yourselves better each day. And now you look at the industry, it's $1 billion industry, right? But high schools have kind of sat in this kind of area where they haven't really done a good job of promoting themselves. And I think it's just because of lack of time, because a lot of these coaches are either doing another job or they're a teacher, and it's a lot. It's a lot to be a high school coach, and a lot of people don't know that. And I love the high school atmosphere because it's usually they can be truthful to you because it's not like they're not going to jump ship to another program usually, right? So you could actually say to the kid, hey, you're average, So I like it for that reason. But so we are building a software that streamlines a lot of processes, and ultimately when someone asks me like what we do, I say we bring communities closer. And people are like looking at me like, how does the software bring communities closer? And but I truly do think we're doing that. Now we're starting at the top level. We're working with state associations. That's our goal. And then working our ways with like the conferences and the schools and then the coaches. So, but what I was mentioning before and what you just asked about like kind of how fragmented things are, our goal is to put everything together. Like, for instance, they have to put their schedules in like 5 different spots, and it's terrible. And if they want to communicate something like promote like a score, they're tweeting it out, they're putting it on Facebook, they're entering that score in 5 different spots, right? So we're looking at ways to streamline that for them, and we hope it actually gets a little bit better promotion, better brand awareness for the school, kind of get the kids excited about it, and really change the culture and perspective of high school sports. And we, at the end, we actually want to connect the kind of what you like amateur sports world in the high school too as well down the road. But some of my best memories was playing high school football, and I was blessed. We played. I came from a big suburban school in Chicago, but we used to get like 10,000 people at our games, and it was just fun. Like it was an awesome time, and it wasn't just about the football game. It was about everything that happened there. And, when those football games went on, yes, people are watching the football game, but they were also watching the spirit team. They were watching the band. The students were there. And you know what the nice thing about that was? The community was better because the town was safe because everyone was at the game. Like it shut down because everyone was there. The superintendent like that, the police people like that, because less stuff was happening because everyone was engaged with this event and what was happening. I'd like to see that blasted out through high school. And if we could help with that by solving issues for coaches, athletic directors, and that's our goal, and we feel like we're doing that, it's a special thing. So that's how I always say we're trying to bring the community together. And that
I find that interesting because college sports does it, right? And they're competing for student population. And it was a brilliant idea. I don't know who came up with it, but they said, you know what, we need to put more investment dollars into our sports programs because there's something here. People are showing up to these games.
That's why students are going to those universities.
We need to double down on this. Yeah. I'm surprised that a high school hasn't, whether that's a private institution because they're trying to compete for students, or if it's a public institution who's trying to really promote the brand in the community. I'm surprised it has not happened yet.
Where I think it helps out, and it has happened in some areas, right? It has happened, but it hasn't happened to the masses, right? And where I think it help, why I think someone should invest into the sports, not even just sports, just the, you know, whatever it's, I mean, if it's sports, if it's drama
Well,
club.
even the theater program, like what schools are really good on the theatrics. You know what schools are really good on business. It's very clear cut on the college realm, but in the high school realm, I couldn't tell you what high school's the best high school. Couldn't tell you that right now.
Oh, and and that's kind of like it's for the community being safer because of that, but also too, when you're trying to pass something for a school at a public institution, like if it's building more to the school, I mean, people are going to want to know, like, what has the school done for my community lately? Like, what is that rallying thing? And I hate saying this, but it should be about education, but sometimes people don't remember that, right? They'll complain about some of that stuff, but if all of a sudden, if it's a good theater program or if it's a good athletic program where people are really invested in the community, that's when, like, that's good memories. That's like being a part of something, right? And like I love our high school football program where I live right now because literally, like, Dennis Piron's our football coach. Like he could probably do the worst thing in the world, but people still love him because he's done so much for this community. And the awareness of what is happening and the buy-in and how he's out there promoting him and himself, especially when football is dying, like our numbers are increasing because people just want to belong to something. And but you just got it takes hard work, Spike. It just takes it takes a lot of hard time to do that, and just and that's why our goal is to make it easier for them to do that, right? We want them to be able to do that.
Well, how big are athletic programs, like the athletic office for high schools? I mean, it's one person.
Yeah, pretty much. Most of the time, if I like, we're working a lot of schools in Iowa right now, because that's where we always start. Like there's the smaller schools, the athletic director usually is the vice principal too as well. Like they have no time to do things, and that's what some of them love our stuff just because we do it for them. Like we've made it automated softwares that they could connect their schedule to Twitter where it automatically goes out with the schedule and with a social media card and makes them look good. So they love it just because we're kind of doing their job for them. I don't want to say doing their job, but we're helping aid with their job. So, but yeah,
You're basically giving them a marketing department. You're almost giving them a marketing department.
We're almost like I call it like we're their sports information software. Like literally, and it's funny. I've gone to big AD meetings. I've always said like a raise of hands of how many of you have a sports information director, and they just look at me like I hate you. So, but no, so it's a passion project for me because what I love about high school athletics and college too, it's a fraternity of people who really want to help each other out. Like, when we first launched Tourney Machine, the first tournament director that we shared it with was a basketball guy, and he wanted to sign exclusivities right away. He was like, I don't want anyone using this because he saw the value of the product, and we were like, oh, that's not going to happen. And we didn't work with that guy, but with this one, it's awesome because when we share this with them, like they'll call the next AD and say, you need to call this. You need to talk to Varsity Bound. You need to talk to Lawler. And that's awesome. It's the greatest thing in the world is because they self-promote each other, and you don't get that anywhere else. And I used to get that with I used to love going to the ABCA, Spiker, because like that's what it was about, right? Dave, have you been to ABCA?
Yep, several times.
Okay, and that's the cool thing about that is it's like a network of people really trying to help each other out. Now, I don't know if you guys knew this. My uncle was a coach at Texas A&M for about 25 years, and he was a pitching coach there. And I remember as a kid going, and they'd get a hotel room, and it was like all these incredible coaches would get together and share best practices, and it was awesome. It was awesome. I still remember at the ABCA one time I was walking the convention hall, and then Augie Garrido, which I'm sure y'all know who that is, like stopped me, like literally stopped me. And he goes, "You Lawler?" I'm like, yeah. He goes, "Jim?" I'm like, yep, that's my uncle. And he actually knew my dad because of what my dad did. And he was actually at University of Illinois for a couple years before he went down to Texas. And he goes, he all of a sudden, I had like a 30 to 45-minute conversation in the hallway with Augie Petty. And he was talking to me about like best practices. It was like the coolest thing in the world. Like I was no one. Like I don't even think I was coaching anything. I was like just out of college. But that's the cool thing about that. Like like we want to help each other out.
Mhm.
And that's where I love the high school athletic world and the coaches because it's just a fraternity of people, women and men really trying to serve their kids better. And that's why I love it because we're really trying to help them out. So
That's what I wish that baseball was, because you mentioned lacrosse had the whatever it's called, lacrosse con. I wish baseball would do that, because then the coaches would have a direct line to the players and parents, and it could be best practices, because the conversations that happen in those hallways and even in the actual speaking room, yeah, you're sharing it with coaches. That's fantastic. But who's using that? It's the players and the parents. I think it'd be awesome if they could just open that up instead of saying it as being ABCA. Maybe I need to talk to Shager about that, but it's amazing to me that the ideas that I had from tournament guy all the way to the Rawlings Tigers, by just having conversations with you and Sam, and then obviously meeting the guys at athletics, I think it'd be a huge service to everybody.
Oh, you know what? It would be amazing for people to hear. Like, honestly, like the last one I remember going to, like, just stopped me in my tracks was, Corbin over at Vanderbilt, and he was, he was telling the stories. It's not even baseball relevant sometimes, but I still remember him telling a story about one of his players who died in a car accident, and it literally just kind of like it was one of those things. It was like a life lesson for me. But his point of his story was he had a kid who, had problems with drugs and problems with everything else, and Corbin gave him, chances, but was like strict with him. And Corbin didn't get to tell the guy. I mean, Corbin's point of the story was he wanted to tell the kid he was proud of him, right? He wanted to tell the kid, "Hey, I was proud of you," and he was going to meet with him that day to tell him that. And he missed his opportunity to do that. And the kid on his way to meet Corbin like died in a car accident or something like that. And it was like, it was, but like hearing those stories, that's not the story we want to hear, but hearing,
But gives you perspective. Gives you perspective. That's important. Gives you perspective on the whole thing.
well, in his story is that you need to say something. Like as a coach, as a person, like we need to be truthful with people. Like, tell your family members that you love them, right? Tell the people, like, seizing the opportunity to do something, and it really made me think about my life and what I needed to do. Because sometimes I held back communication with someone, like, saying I love you to my dad, and saying I love you to my kids. Like it made me change my ways. And these people are incredible professions. You're right. Like Dave and Spike, like these people need to be at that and hear those things. And it's beyond baseball, right? It's beyond baseball. But with the baseball point, to hear what all these people doing, these professionals, the time, the effort that's put into this thing, it would be great. And I would launch pad baseball even better. Like
Without a doubt. Like think about Comic-Con. Comic-Con is unbelievable. Or Warped Tour, where it's this celebration of a specific genre. It could be the same thing for sports, and I'm glad that lacrosse is doing it. I would love to see baseball do it, without a doubt,
I
because
think
it would attract people from droves.
I think it's going that way though.
it's getting there. So I've been like going to the ABCA because my dad was like a 40-year person going to that because my uncle, right? And I mean, getting the whole, now they have like 5 years ago they started introducing like the travel sports, where they first like kind of ignored that space. It is getting more people involved. And the one thing I've always said is that, like my brother coached at Notre Dame for a while, right? And we always talked about like how college football and college basketball does a great job of marketing their brand and their people. And I go, and I think baseball could have the opportunity as well. It just needed kind of like TV, marketing, branding. And I feel like it's getting that way, especially of travel sports. Like, let's get these true professionals, like the Corbins of the world, the great, to really influence like what's happening at the youth level, right? Because They can. And then that makes them more marketable because now they're a household name, like the fact that, Nick Saban, who's an incredible coach, like everyone knows in the sports world who Nick Saban is, but I don't know if anyone knows who the top baseball coach is. Right? And that's kind of I'd love to see that happen. Like I'd love to see the messages of these top baseball coaches in college be heard.
And I have a feeling it's going to go that way because our conversations in the beginning, about 3 years ago, the market cap of youth sports was at 17 bill. Now it's at 19 bill. And I saw a projection that it's going to get into the 70s very, very soon, probably a 5-6 year standpoint. I think having those conventions, and again, people are going to say like, oh, that's bad. We need to have amateurism. Like, no, like having money flow into it makes it better, in my opinion, because it brings out more competition and there's going to be more innovation.
No, absolutely. And again, I think if, like, I actually want, so Ryan Brownlee now runs that ABCA, and he's a great dude. I don't know if you guys have ever met him before. When we used to run showcases, Ryan Brownlee was the best worker that I've ever had. Like, he literally is one of the most passionate people. He does everything the right way. I think he's going to try to take it to that next level because he sees the importance of, bridging the gap between what they're doing and what you all are doing, right? And I think it will get there, and I think it needs to. I think the problem right now when it's separated, the professionals are out of the game, and we need to bring the professionals into the game, like to hear the message, right? Because the one thing I don't like about it, about the big business in amateur sports, is that you get some clowns in it, right? I hate saying that, but you do. The professionals in the organizations, like, what you guys are doing is great. Right? You guys run a professional organization. It's not a fly-by-night thing. You guys have some structure. You're trying to do the right thing for the kids. Unfortunately, you could post an awesome, website, Twitter, and promise the world to people. And there's a lot of bad people out there that don't do a good job. And I hate that, right? So if we bring the professionals in to kind of critique and endorse and do things, I think it will actually make the game better. And that's just my personal feeling. I wish the conversations I had with college coaches about recruiting, and the parents need to hear that. Like, parents need to hear what their thoughts are, right? Because recruiting is like no one knows anything about. There's not a book here and says this is how this is about recruiting. And I wish the college coaches, the recruiting coordinators, would communicate with the masses, because there's a lot, that's where I think a lot of people.
It's a moving target. It's a moving target because right now the big conversation is, I saw a tweet from one of a local coaches that got frustrated with 14-year-olds announcing that they're blessed and honored that they received an oral commitment. It's like, you can't be mad at that. Like, you can, but you can't. It's not regulated yet. And if coaches are going to make that move, think about it on a supply standpoint. There's so much supply of players, but there's also a small supply of really, really talented players. And then when an SEC school sees a kid, guess what happens? You have all of them going in. So power to that 14-year-old to get his brand out there and get the oral commitment.
I understand the annoyance of it because it looks self-absorbed, but
yeah,
you know what though? That kid's marketing themselves, and you know what? Be in their shoes. Like, how hard is it to get that sometimes? Especially the kid. I still remember we had a kid named Zach Jaros, who was like a borderline Division I kid, and his dream was to play Division I baseball. And I remember him tweeting out something like, "Got my first offer," or "Went to my first visit," and then all of a sudden, 3 other schools called him that day because it was like, he was the hot person right there, right? Which I see it for that reason, because the kids marketing themselves. So, I mean, do I like seeing it? No. When I first saw it, I was like, I remember talking to a friend of mine who's a quarterbacks coach at Temple, and we were talking about that, and he goes, "No, it's actually smart for the kids," because he goes, "I see it as a recruiter," and I go, "Oh, they're talking to him. I better talk to him," because sometimes what happens is sometimes the kids are like the best kept secret, where like, I'm not going to talk to that kid yet because I don't want anyone else to know about him, and I'm going to get him. So
it's game theory. It's prisoner's dilemma right there. It literally is prisoner's dilemma. And it's now getting the power. It goes back to the Wall Street bets type of situation is that it's power to the player now.
Power to the little guy.
Yeah, it's power to the little guy. Yeah, market yourself. I'm all for that. Take the reins and grab those coaches because they're going to keep that secret from everybody else.
Yeah, no, and I am. It doesn't bother me anymore when I see that, especially when it was presented to me that way. Because you know what, if that kid's getting an opportunity to go play at a next level, like God bless him. You know, and that's an awesome, awesome thing. So,
and he still hasn't made it to campus yet. That's what other people don't realize. That yeah, he orally committed, but he still has to make it to campus. There's a lot of guys that don't even make it there.
I would say one thing I would love to see change though is the early signings. Like
without a doubt, yeah.
I don't like it when a 14-year-old commits, and there's a lot of reasons why I don't like it. Now, granted, good for the kid. Like, good for the kid to get that, and that's because it's just part of the beast, right? But what I hate about it is that, some kids deserve it. Like, I don't want to say deserve it, but they have it, right? Like, for instance, I got a kid right now who's pitching at Louisville. He's 6'7", throws 90s, and he was 6'5" in high school throwing 90s. Like, okay. Yeah, Louisville signed him as a sophomore. There's a reason. Like, he's already there, right? But the problem is, like, what I don't like about it is that some kids like give up, right? They think they made it, and they kind of just they're coasting. Now, obviously, the college doesn't want that because they want winners. They want people who compete and do things. So I think it could stop that. But the one thing I really want to see done, and I witnessed it myself, and it just kills me. It's like when Glenn, who is this special specimen of a person, right? 6'7" now, and just, I'm looking up to him. And but other parents sometimes don't see that, and they're questioning like, well, why is my kid not getting a scholarship yet? And I'm like, well, because he's not 6'5" throwing 90, and that's the problem. Like, and I think that's where the nature of the business gets really poisoned, is because people are looking for the edge to get that scholarship, where it's like, invest that money into education. You probably get a better scholarship actually being smarter, in that sense. So, but that's where I hate it. So like, I want that to be abolished personally, because now that business of that, it gets escalated, where like kids are buying things and training improperly and not letting grow because they're trying to chase this something. And sometimes it's not even the kid, it's the parent. And then, for organizations like our like yourself, you got to constantly communicate with the parents of like, hey, it's okay. They're in the right progression. They're fine. And just think about the stress that puts for the kid. And
well, it's recruiting education, and then the players that are giving the education, there's an alternative motive when they do give the education. So that's why I love this show, is because I view it as a cross section where I can talk about culture, I can talk about people, I can talk about recruiting, I can talk about baseball, I can talk about startup culture with you, and all of it intersects, and there's no alternative motive. All I want to do is just literally talk to good dudes.
Have a cool conversation.
Get
some
conversation.
Good information out there.
Yeah.
Well, and like, but it goes to that, like, think about the stress of the kid, of the parents are trying to, he sees all his peers getting these scholarships, because like, I feel bad for that kid. And sometimes they play with the stress and it's bad. And like the one kid I mentioned before was Zach Jaros, who was that borderline Division I kid. When he made his commitment right at his end of his senior year, right before going in the fall of his senior year, it's like this weight was lifted off of him, and then he became a natural athlete again, where the dude became an all-state football player. And like he's like 5'8", dude, and like just an amazing athlete. He ended up being an all-state football player, and then was like the best shortstop in Illinois that year. And it's just because I think that stress was gone, and I'd love to see that stress. I mean, it's tough being a kid. I mean, could you imagine being an 17-year-old right now, or a 16-year-old? Like, I can't even imagine it. And then adding that stress to it with everything else, like, I want to eliminate that if we can. And I think a lot of it could be is if we go back.
And I think the only way that's going to happen is if NCAA regulates something. And I know that was a huge conversation a year ago on the ABCA, which is like, how do we make this thing? Because I don't think college coaches are all for it. I like for doing the early signs. I think they get a little frustrated with it. They get it. They understand it.
It's a gamble. It's a guess, but they're also getting paid a lot of money, so they have to make that gamble and guess now. So that's where the NCAA has to step in. So they have to make that gamble and guess now.
Well, it started happening a lot. It was with like the borderline, the mid-level schools, because it was like their chance to get the top kid. So like I still remember we had a kid named Brady Corrigan who was at Arizona State. And like when the kid, before he even stepped on a high school campus, not alone a college campus, before he stepped on a high school campus, Illinois State offered him a full scholarship, because it was, and I asked him, I'm like, why are you doing that? And they're like, because that's the only how we know that he's going to go to Arizona State.
It's over leveraging. It's becoming an over leverage. That's what it ends up happening.
Yeah. And that part of the business, I hope goes away. And I think honestly, I think if it does, your organizations could do a better job of really getting the kids better and focus on getting to that point, because I mean, they're puppies still at freshman and sophomore, right? Mm-hmm. So, and
we're not even mentioning, I don't even want to open this can of worms, but the NCAA was starting to think about opening up paying athletes right before COVID. I don't know if you remember that. And literally then COVID happened, and then literally it just went silent. No, there's still news reports. Like it's an open case. Like they haven't finalized it yet. It's still open.
I don't know what your feelings on it are, but like, hey, there's kids who come through some tough situations and they're making a lot of money for the school, some of them. And I get it. Like there needs to be something for those kids, because it is I was like the worst player on my college baseball team, but I had to fully commit to it every day. Where it's a full-time job. I mean, and if what those kids were, on Alabama or whatever they're doing. So like, I don't want to argue against them at all, because I don't. Now, I still remember it was like 10 years ago. It was like the Baylor AD I heard on like a radio show talk about was, I love this idea he had, was like, that scholarship is actually real money, right? The scholarship is real money. Yeah. And they said, instead of just like automatically giving that money to the school and where the kid doesn't have to see it, because they don't, was said, give that money to the kid. Like give them that $40,000, and they have to actually write the bill for the school to realize like, oh, I'm actually paying money to go here. So I thought that was a kind of a good idea, but
I like that idea, because if you just give a scholarship, yeah, technically retail price, it's worth $40,000, right? But we all know that there's profit there and there's margins there. So yeah, I really like that idea of, all right, our cap right now, because our out of state tuition is $40,000, that's our cap for paying athletes, and then they have to write the bill. The only thing is that you start getting into, can the kid actually make the payments and make sure that he keeps. Well,
then you're wondering,
or that the kids can make the right
payment somewhere else.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I guess you'd have to put it into a separate account, like two separate accounts, and then make sure that they. Oh.
I'll tell you guys, my dad worked his butt off, to raise me in a really safe neighborhood. Like really, it was a bubble neighborhood, and I had a different perspective as in high school and I did in college. And I still remember doing something in a college where I spoke up about like, no, you should be able to get out in any environment you can and do whatever you want. And, that was easy for me to say, because I was in a, suburban area where every opportunity for me to succeed was right in front of me. Right. Where I remember getting out of college and working at, I was working with a fitness company, and we were doing a special project for the inner city kids of Chicago, South Side, like tough neighborhoods, like scary places in some ways. And not everyone's starting at the same starting point. And I see those kids, those kids were just like the kids in my suburbs. Like they were free spirited. They were awesome. I mean, just incredible people. But once they walked out of that hall, it was like, what were they going to? Right. And, it's, life's not fair, and it's terrible, in that sense. And some of those kids need that extra help, I'm a big believer on product and environment. And if we could help support those kids somehow and get out of where they're at, that's a great thing that we could do, you know. And that's why I never argue about the schools paying some people, because some of those kids are in situations where it's like none of us could ever experience, and and I've seen it, you know. I haven't lived it, fortunately, because my dad worked his butt off to get where we were at, but I've seen it, and it's not a fun situation.
HBO had a really good documentary on this, and they didn't really label it as like athletes should get paid. It was just literally scope of what the landscape is on a couple of players, and it was like bad scenarios like that. And I go back and forth. I go back and forth on this. If you nail me down on tomorrow and be like, yeah, athletes shouldn't get paid, and then you talk to me in a week, I'm like, yeah, they have to get paid. Like, think about it. The lifespan of an athlete is so small, right. And if they make it to pro ball, then they need to get as much money as they possibly can, because once pro ball is done and they're not one of the top players, they don't have a job. What are you going to do? Like, what's your next move? You know what I'm saying? So I feel like if you're able to make money at 20 years old early on, or 18 years old, all power to you. I think that's a free market economy, and it should definitely be explored.
I remember one time, and obviously baseball, you get drafted out of high school, and I remember talking to my uncle. One of my cousins was going to sign out of high school, and he chose to go to Florida instead. He was a special pitcher, but I was actually asking my uncle, like, are you really considering like going pro? Like, you've seen all the data. He goes, Todd, if he gets $1 million at 18, like, what's the opportunity to get him get $1 million? Like, how many people say they could get $1 million? So I'm like, yeah, that's a good thought right there. He goes, and he's surrounded by right people. That's not just going to go away. So, I always say people could get it, go get it. Like, I don't feel bad when people declare early or do different things, because you just never know. You never know, so.
Yeah, it's making sure that you can you got a spot. I mean, that when you get the spot, 7% of athletes make it to college, right? Out of high school. So if you're able to get that and then if you're pro get paid, why not?
Why not?
I mean, you can always get that education. It's a lot different now too, because you have online education. I saw a really good tweet from somebody, and colleges are going to hate me for this, but it was a really good tweet. There's kind of some underlining problems there, but he said, why are we paying $20,000 when I could go on master classes and learn from the top people? And
well, I don't know what your college experience was, but like for me, I hate saying it, the educational aspect of it really didn't do anything for me. Like, did not do anything at all. Now, I had some great instructors. Rod Coffin was a great teacher, and I loved him, in that sense. And but other than that, like, it really was just the part of growing up in the campus experience, right? I think that's what you're paying for. But like, but to be $30,000 to $40,000 in debt and that stuff, it's like, you're right. It's a tough pill to swallow, like what are you really getting, and it's my in-laws are all, union hard worker type of people, and they're tradespeople. Like, they're literally making sometimes better salaries off of hard labor work. Now, that's not something they enjoy, but they're getting it. They're doing it at like 19, 20 years old. And you sit there and go, they have no debt. They're actually making more money out of what I would, right out of college. So it's like, I know we're not talking athletics there, but
I would say too, it depends on the degree that you get too. Like, if you get that challenging degree, then yeah, it's definitely worth it. Like, if you're trying to go after a doctorate or something like that. But if it's one of those things where I'm doing water polo on Thursdays, then what's that really going to help you with?
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. So,
I literally have these notes and questions that I was supposed to ask you, and I haven't asked you one of them.
You knew that you were talking to me, and
I think you said that's how this was going
to go. I have a feeling that you looked at those questions. You're like, yeah, this is not going to happen.
I'll be brutally honest here, and I'm always honest too, by the way. But like, I actually looked it over. I jotted in red, like, typing of what I hope to say. So I did look into it, and but knowing that, so just in case, But yeah, no, I know, man. So I apologize. I go on rants.
No, I love it. I mean, it's a great conversation. That's why I wish ABCA had something this year. Hopefully in the future, and I mean, maybe we can get on Brownlee, and maybe we can try to convince him to start this whole movement of bringing in players and parents. I think that'd be awesome.
He'll do it. I think he'll do it. He's the type of guy who'll do it. I think he gets it. I mean, he's a parent himself, and I think that does change you a lot when you are a parent yourself. And it's changed me. I mean, I still remember when I ran my first club teams, and every parent was like, "Oh, we need spirit wear, we need this," and I was like, "Why? Like, why would we need that?" And it used to bother me. And then you have your own kids, and then you realize that it's really about a sense of belonging, and that's why they're proud of what they're doing. And if it wasn't for my own kids, I would have never saw that, So it does change perspectives. And I think, if Brownlee wants, his mark and legacy to be done, I mean, it's already growing, and I think he can make it into a better situation it's about amateur baseball in general. So
Like, I love the Rawlings Tigers. I love it goes back to what you said. You're belonging to something, and it's the people inside the organization. But I more importantly want baseball fans, and I want that belonging where it ends up becoming like a Comic-Con, where you have all these people that have they love different characters, but they come into one spot just to talk about baseball. I think it'd be cool to have diamond sports just in general. It'd be just diamond sports in general, bringing in softball, because again, that's fragmented. You know how the softball space is.
Gosh.
I wish softball and baseball would stop having this argument of our sport's better. It's like we're playing the same damn sport,
same game.
Well, at the end of the day, you're trying to help the people out, right? You're helping out the kids, and that's a huge thing right there. So, and that's and you know what too as well. If we're able to share best practices and what's happening, I think everyone gets better educated. Not only like guys like you, but not only guys like who are in college ranks, but I think the parents and players are better educated and understand the process. And I think that could really help the game. And this is beyond baseball. I think this is with every sport. I really do, because with big business in sports, I like it for a lot of reasons, because it does provide a lot of opportunities. But there's a lot of things I don't about it too as well. Like I do think not to touch on hard subjects here, but people always talk about specialization in sports. I don't think it's because people are driving to be specialized in a sport. It's because I think sometimes the way it is and the sports are, that kids give up on sports too early because it's a matter of cost, And case in point, I look at my kid. My oldest son is 11 years old now, and I'm doing a team for him, and I have it at a price point where I think it's fair. But that's for me growing up, I think it's expensive. Like, I play Little League, man. Like, we paid $100, and that was it. Like, now everything is a travel sport. I hate saying that, but and a lot of it is what I call wreck on wheels. And I can't coin that term. Dave Garsha, who's a baseball coach, said that to me, and I'm like, I like that. Because like what you guys are doing at the Rawlings Tigers is amazing, right? There's a lot of thought and education into it, but then you got 10 other organizations who just are fly-by-nights that I don't want to say they're not bad people, but it's just like, oh my gosh. And then the market goes up, where like my son's kid, like my son, not his kid, he doesn't have kids yet. Came out wrong. But my son's friends, like, there's kids who are doing travel soccer, travel basketball, and they're paying probably over $1,000 for each of those. And then they start doing, they want to play baseball, but they get into our rec leagues, and the rec leagues are, I hate saying it, they're just not there anymore. Right. It's, and all of a sudden that good athlete quits baseball because it's like, well, I don't want to do travel because I don't want to make the commitment and the financial commitment. So I think we're losing good athletes, and this is not just baseball, but it's in all sports and youth, because of the price of these things. You know what I mean? So like, no, don't get me wrong. I think if you're paying for the thing and getting great value, it's awesome. And I always want to do that for my kids, and I know every parent is. But it stinks though for the fact that like I got to play like 4 different sports growing up. Like it was awesome for me. I got to meet a lot of different people, a lot of different, friends, and actually I got to experience a lot of different coaches, which made me a better person. And I want to see that more in the youth market too as well, because like, when your community programs are driving their prices, and really what are you getting for it? Like, it's a lot of dads still volunteer coaching, which is awesome. And I'm all for dads volunteering and coaching, but like, not when I'm paying $1,000 or $1,200 or $1,500 for it, right? Like I still remember, like I joked around with one of our basketball guys, and our basketball organization is great. Like I love the people there, but I said, "What's the difference between this and like the YMCA team that we played for?" I go, "You'd be coaching the same damn way." I go, "But we're paying like $700 for it." You know what I mean? And that's the thing I hate about youth sports and where it's going is the cost of it. And I think it's driving some kids away from playing a lot of sports, and then it's driving them to specialize in sports. So,
but I will say this, like as the market cap gets bigger and larger and money keeps on flowing into it, you would think that it would get better. Like those fly by night organizations that are literally just living off of a logo, those will fall to the wayside. Where then the big players where they are organized, they give coaches resources, they give the players resources and the parents. I would think that would get bigger and the cost would drive down.
Well, and what I would hope is like, let's take your organization in general. And I know a lot about our organization, but I've never been down with, in that sense. Mm-hmm. But what I would always hope and what I always wanted to do is like, you take an incredible organization like what you have going on, right? You got great people working for you. You got great educators. You got great coaches. And you still need to serve your people that you have. But I would love for the fact like a Tiger organization where you go down and reach and help out with like the little leagues. You help out with the community organizations. You almost have this grassroots effort where, again, that special kid who, is more talented should be playing for the Rawlings Tigers. 100% should be playing for the Rawlings Tigers. But the kid who's maybe, 8 years old and doesn't know how good he could be, I don't want that kid to give up baseball, but you guys might make it enjoyable for them because you're outreaching for them. And like what you just said, if we get rid of the waste and we could have that stuff happen, I think the game, and again, this is all athletics and all sports, will be a lot better place. And, and that's literally one of my goals to do with what we're doing from, introducing high school to amateur sports one day, is that I want people like you to thrive, your groups to thrive, and help out the community more, where it gets more kids involved in the game.
I still think it's so early though. Like think about how old the club travel scene is. Like Perfect Game was started in what, 2000
ish? Yeah.
2000-ish. And that's the Cadillac of tournaments and showcases right now.
Yep. Nope. And
it's only been 21 years. And think about Tourney Machine. Tourney Machine's only 10 years old.
Well, it's funny because I blame ourselves for that, the growth in it, because we took guys who were doing 2 to 3 tournaments a year. Now they're able to do 10. And you look at Perfect Game, that beat, the wood bat thing went from like 200 teams to 400 pretty much overnight because of our software. And, but you're right. It is early. I still remember the guy from the quarterback's coach from Temple, Craig. We were talking about this stuff, and I remember we were at a local pub talking about youth sports and his perspective on it as a football guy. And I told him what we wanted to do, and he laughed in a good way and just says, "Man, you got the biggest uphill challenge." And I said, "I know, but I go, we're going to do it." It's going to take a while. I mean, it's a 10, 15 year thing, but if we could point to that and get the right people involved with kids, youth sports, that's what I want to see. But it's going to take a while. It is going to take a while. So, but
man.
Todd, this has been an awesome conversation, and I would love to have you come back and we can answer the question.
Part 2?
But again, I have a feeling, again, it goes back to my original statement. I never know what our conversation could be like. We could end up talking about sports and then all of a sudden talk about African prisons. I mean, it could literally go in that many different directions. But
it can be. So no, that's why in our company meetings, there's some meetings I get invited to, and there's some meetings I don't get.
So they walk in, they're like, "Is Todd invited to this meeting?"
Yeah, that's how it is. And you know what? I used to take offense to it. Now I'm like, I get it. So we want to get stuff done, and we don't want Todd dominating the conversation. So
it's always a good conversation, Todd. I love it. Let's end it off there, and then I want to have you back on. And I like to really dive deeper into startup culture, because I wanted to talk about teams. I wanted to talk about finding the right people. I also wanted to go down the route of adoption. Like, how do you get someone to adopt a product and see if it's on the growth or declining? And then I wanted to go into the segue too of baseball. So let's do that at some point. Again, we're already at now we're past 90 minutes, which is awesome. So
I have good answers for you. I really, really do. So
we'll keep people hanging on that one. So guys,
right?
Yes, exactly. Guys, make sure that you subscribe. Todd, give them if they want to contact you about Varsity Bound. I know that there's some athletic directors that do listen to this program. Give them a contact information, because I do think that they should open up a conversation with you.
You know what? Absolutely. I think actually any high school coach that does listen to this or athletic director, I mean, we want to help you out. It's actually our website is varsitybound.com. And then my email is todd@varsitybound and .com, obviously. And we are willing to help out. We're at a growing stage right now. We started in Iowa. We want to actually hit out every state that we can. We're creeping in Illinois, South Dakota, and we want to get into Missouri, Nebraska, all the touching states of Iowa. So varsitybound.com. You know, again, kind of we're trying to connect. We're trying to make life simpler for you, and we're trying to connect everything that you do into one spot to manage everything for not only you but for your fans and your athletes and your parents. So, thanks, Spikes.
Do you have a closing pitch, Dave?
I don't know. I was just a fly on the wall today.
I feel like there has to be a part 2 here. So I don't think we should do closing pitches.
Yeah, no closing pitch.
Let's wait for our closing pitch in the second episode, part 2. And who knows, Todd? It could be like a part 3, part 4. We're never going to give a closing pitch.
We're playing. This was the first inning. We'll do 9 innings.
Thank you for watching or listening or both to The Closing Pitch. If you would like to get your closing pitch featured on the show, we use a podcasting app called Anchor, where you can submit your statement or question via audio. Or what you can do is comment in the comment section of this post. We also accept direct messages. Please give us the A-OK if you do send us a DM to use your statement or question on the show. Last thing, please give us a review on your platform of choice. 5-star preferably, and we value your opinion, and this allows us to reach more people. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you in the next episode.